Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We are live for our first weekly meta breakdown for the Bloomburrow Standard post-rotation metagame. So we are going to be looking at Standard Best of 1 today. We'll cover and start doing the chain as soon as the data is available for every other format. We'll look at Best of 3. We'll look at Explore, Historic, Timeless as the data starts rolling in. Standard Best of 1 is usually the first one to get data populated. Speaking of data, we are getting said data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen. Companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, tracks your win rates along with the win rates of other players, gives us a whole bunch of stats in terms of popularity of decks, win rates, a whole bunch of slice and dice with that. If you want to get it started with Untapped.gg, the link is in the video description down below, but I will timestamp and paste all these deck lists so you can pull them in and start your journey to Mythic Rank. So for this week, because it's the first week, keep in mind, this is like 2 days into the season. We're calling it the best decks because it's theoretically the best highest win rate decks thus far, but it is still early in the season. Some of the older stock lists are still reasonable to some extent. People are trying out new things, so the win rates will be kind of inflated in some cases, lower in other cases. So just be mindful of that when you're going in. Make sure you're kind of looking, if you're kind of resource constrained, you may want to wait a couple days more just to see where the data kind of trends. For the first week of Standard, I usually do 2 videos for the week just to cover out the meta. So jumping in, we're going to start popularity of the day, and then we'll jump into the lists. So right now, Orzhov, they haven't really defined the archetypes yet because it's still new, but like the Orzhov Bats deck, is about 12% of the meta. We have mono black discard at 11%. We will cover mono black in this video, but not because it's the best deck. We have Rakdos Lizards, Golgari, Boros Mice, mono Red Aggro, Azorius Control, and then Selesnya Rabbits. So those are kind of the trend. The trend right now, because it's only 2 days, wouldn't hold too much weight into it. The popularity of the day will kind of trend more as we kind of go up in terms of volume of games. Speaking of volume of games, we're at 64,000 that were played between July 30th and August 1st. So a lot of hype in terms of the set itself. We're going to look platinum to mythic rank because we also had a ladder reset. So new season, new trends, stuff like that. We'll jump into it. And we're actually going to do it a little different today because we had someone already claim mythic #1 spot. Magic Christian, they went 80 and 30 with this particular list. So pulling it up, this is kind of an update on the, in quotes, Rakdos Aggro deck. It's basically mono red splash the Callous Sellsword. This view, unfortunately, was giving me a little trouble the other day, but core of the deck is kind of prowess, throw damage at your opponent. So you have Cacophony Scamp that when it deals damage, you can basically fling it at your opponent and it deals damage equal to its power. You have Heartfire Hero, which is another similar effect. Whenever you target it for the first time for the turn, it gets a counter on it, and then when it dies, it deals damage to each opponent. So similar kind of concepts. This one grows the Heartfire Hero. The Scamp on its own doesn't grow, but the Scamp can hit any target, and it can kind of self-enable by just dealing damage. So there's those cards there. There's Swift Spears, there's Slickshot Show-Offs, and then there's also Ember Heart Challenger here. Haste 2/2 Prowess, whenever it gets targeted first time, exile top card of your library, and you get to play it. So if it's lands, you get to play it as well. There's a Callous Sellsword. More often than not, this is just going to be used for its Burn Together ability, for you to basically sacrifice a creature, deal damage equal to its power target opponent. Then it's just a lot of things to target creatures. Felonious Rage gives it a plus, haste, and if it were going to die, you get a 2/2 Detective. So just another body there. Mirren Bane Splitter is just a flash way to equipped, +2 power. Now, notably with Valiant, unlike Heroic, it's a spell or ability, so you can just equip either of your Valiant creatures and get that ability. Monstrous Rage in here. You have Dreadmaw's Ire. There's a Fugitive Codebreaker just kind of hanging out. I would just play a 4th, honestly. Ember Heart, this card's been really good. And then 2 Blazing Crescendos. Just card advantage, pumps, stuff like that. Mana base, pretty clean, just a bunch of mountains. And then the 8 black sources if you want to cast the Sellsword. So very strong linear list, which is what you usually want in mono, like in best of 1. Moving on, we go to Selesnya Rabbits. So 69.7% with this one here. And this one's featuring, this is block constructed basically. A lot of new cards in the set. So we're going to start off with Paw Patch Recruit. Sorry, my allergies are terrible today. Paw Patch Recruit is a new card. So 1 mana, 2/1 Offspring. Offspring is kicker. Every ability is kicker, just with a different name. But basically, think of it, you pay the Offspring cost, you get a clone of that creature, a copy, but it's a 1/1 instead. So this card's really strong because whenever a creature gets targeted, you get to put a counter on another creature you control, and then they trigger off each other with the Offspring. So just a way to kind of punish your opponent for targeted removal. You have Valley Might Caller, another 1 mana threat. So 1 mana, 1/1. We're getting a lot of tramples onto 1/1s. Whenever another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control enters the battlefield, notably not cast, so tokens work. This just kind of scales and gets bigger here. I actually had both of these in my pre-release pool, which is kind of cool. Then we have Beauregard Mentor, 2 mana, basically scalar based on the number of creatures you control with trample in it. So if the core of the deck's going wide and then just beating in. Case of the Gateway, just as a way for removal, and then an Anthem effect. Phineas, Ace Archer, Vigilance Reach, and then whenever it attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control that's a token or a rabbit. Then if you control 10 or more power, you get to draw a card. So just another kind of lord, a different way of a lord. It doesn't need to attack, but it's a way to kind of get some power. Fallen Shield Hair is a rabbit. It buffs your tokens. It can be a boost of power to one creature. You have a lot of creatures that happen to have trample, so the extra power is really nice as well. Regal Bunnicorn just scales with the number of creatures you have. Bunnicorn just kind of got outshined by an uncommon, which is kind of funny. Just this is better in most cases. Obviously, this counts all permanents, non-land permanents, but just the trample is a lot more relevant. And then you have Valley Quest Caller, a lord for your rabbits, and then it gives you some scry, so some card selection. Up to it, just a way to make 3 1/1s, and then Knight Errant of Eos helps you find your cards there. Cavern of Souls, and then Tree City. I think this card's probably not necessary. It doesn't help you early game, and then late game, most of your deck curves out pretty cheap. You don't need huge amounts of mana. It's not like elves that you have mana sinks. I would probably just play the white village over it because it's some card advantage. The green village lets you put counters onto your creatures, but I'd probably just play a white village over that. Save yourself a rare as well. So that is rabbits. Then go to Rakdos Lizards. So the tribes are here, 64%. So typal lizards. And this deck here cares about dealing damage, and then it kind of triggers subsequent abilities. So Hired Claw, whenever 1 or more lizards you control attack, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent, and then you put a counter on Hired Claw. You can only activate it if opponent lost life this turn. So scalable 1-drop. Iridescent and Vine Slasher, same Offspring ability. Whenever a line comes into play, you ping your opponent. Ravine Raider, another just a menace, evasive creature that you can sink mana into. Fireglass Mentor, beginning of your second main phase. If opponent lost life this turn, exile top 2 cards of your library, choose one. So just card advantage, basically you can play. This is like Burning Tree Emissary, but basically your opponent has to lose life, but it lets you multi-spell early. Gev, Scaled Scorch, other creatures you control under the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on them for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a lizard spell, deals 1 damage to target opponent. This is kind of cool because if you have this out, you cast the Gecko, it triggers the life loss, which then gives you the mana. You have Vile Smasher, which pings whenever a... what is it? Not mercenary. I forget the word. It cares about... Outlaw. Jeez, it is too early in the morning for this. Outlaw comes into play. So mercenary, warlock doesn't count. Warlock doesn't count, does it? Oh no, warlocks do count. So it all kind of plays into that theme. So this just does a whole bunch of ping damage, which plays to the deck. You have Valley Flame Caller. Whenever basically a lizard deals damage, deals 1 damage more. That also works with stuff like the damage from the Vine Slasher with the lands coming into play. And then Laughing Jasper, Flint, just some card advantage. So you have a lot of threats in this deck in terms of density for things that must be answered. We see the Rockface Village for haste, and then the Mudflap Village as a way to get something back from your graveyard. Cavern of Souls, again, going to see quite a bit more play with all these typo style decks. Now this deck's a work of art. 100%, whoever built it and shared it, definitely the greatest deck builder of all time. So this is my deck. This is my mono red deck. I closed out the season pushing to Mythic with it. I didn't play much Constructed. So I have a video on it. I have a best of 3 version with a video explaining the best of 3 version if you're interested in that. At 58%. So this one's more prowessy themed. Had some people say like, oh, I've gone 13-1 with it, and other people saying they can't win with it. I think it's just how you navigate the deck. It's a little bit more with prowess. It's not just dump your creatures, it's sequencing that matters more. So kind of getting you those edge points. But Slick Shot, Emberheart that we mentioned, the Heartfire Hero, and Swiftspear as your creature package. Might of the Meek plays with your mice to give them trample. Or sorry, give them +1 power, gives any of your creatures trample, and then draws you a card, so just kind of keeps these spells going. This version of the deck has Shock and Lightning Strike as removal. Monstrous Rage in here, 2 of the Bane Splitters, Case of the Crimson Pulse for card advantage, Engine, and then Witchstalker Frenzies in here for just some catch-all removal, 2 Mishra's Foundries in the mana base. We then go to Orzhov Bats, 60%. So this is a life gain kind of synergy deck. As the mono red deck, this deck was very scary to play against. The Case gains you life whenever a creature comes to play. Rune Lurker Bat, just an evasive life linker. Obviously, Deep Cavern Bat, everybody knows at this point. Comes in, hand hates, and life link. You have Essence Chandler, which is kind of the new Johnny Pridemate of the set. As long as you've lost life this turn, it gains Flying and Vigilance. And whenever you gain life, you put a counter on it. When it dies, you get to redistribute those counters. So one way you can lose life is with either like Thran Portal or Cave of Koilos. Make sure you're doing manual tapping to kind of trigger that effect. Go for the Throat as removal. Lunar Convocation is a strong card. Basically, in your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent loses a life. And then if you lost life, you get a bat, and then you can pay mana to draw cards, which is nice. The Starscape Cleric, whenever you gain life, each instance of gaining life drains your opponent. You can offspring this as well, so it's kind of like Reach in terms of burn. Dark Star Augur as basically a Dark Confidant style effect to draw you cards. Yogg plays really nicely with all these cheap evasive flyers. And then we have Zorlin, Cosmos Caller. Whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. So this plays really nice. So say you attack with 3 bats. It's 3 instances of life gain for the Starscape, so they lose 3 life. And then whenever Zorlin enters or attacks, you can pay Orzhov in 2 life, and then you can return target non-land permanent with value 3 CMC from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter. So nice suite of abilities for the Bat Shell. Then we go to Boros Mice, so 57% here. So some elements of the like mono red deck, stuff like that. The big kind of draw of going Mice is Mabel. So Mabel, 3 mana, 3/3. Other mice you control get +1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you create an equipment, legendary equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/1, vigilance, trample, and haste. So very strong equipment. You have like the Ember Hearts in here. You have the Heartfire Heroes, Cheeky House Mice as a way to target your stuff for Valiant, and just being a 2/1 for 1. Flowerfoot has Offspring, and then whenever it Valianted, your mice get +1/0. You have as well Manifold Mouse, which basically, if you offspring it, you could make any of your creatures basically become Embercleave. Trample Double Strike, which is strong, especially if you stack power. Inti for trample and card advantage, as well as the ability triggers Valiant. Demonic Ruckus in here. You have Might of the Meek, Monstrous Rage, and War Squeak. So enchant enters the battlefield, target opponent can't block this turn, enchanted creature gets +1/1 and has haste. I saw Rabid Gnaw, kind of the red damage based effect, also get played in some of these versions, so that's something you might want to consider as well. So 2 decks we're not going to go great detail on, but just kind of giving a heads up. Mono black, discard. Not doing so great. 59%, 300 games. Kind of built around the new Bandits talent, similar to like the rack style effect. These decks usually don't do the best because there's a certain, all these decks are very low to the ground typically, so they run out of cards in hand, and you just draw discard effects when your opponent doesn't have cards in hand. It doesn't do much. You kind of offset it a bit with things like Rankle's Prank that has a bit more utility, or Binding Negotiations that can at least draw you cards from the graveyard, but still, like, you get to a point of just running out of kind of things to discard. You should be playing Myrex in the mana base. But give you an idea if you're considering something like this. Not the best for best of one, might be better in best of three, but the meta tends to be a little bit slower. And then Azorius Control, another deck, 140 games, 43%. Kind of interesting because like a deck with 4 temporary lockdowns just not doing too well. You have kind of the new counterspell effect, Long River's Pull, Ardent Gust as some removal. You have the Stoic Sphinx as your kind of win con, flash it in, as well as Beza, the Bounding Spring. Just nice kind of break parity. If your opponent's ahead, you get a whole bunch of different effects. 4 or 5 body. So Season of Weaving in here, draws you cards, gets you copies, so you can copy your Beza in here, and then return each non-token permanent to its owner's hand. So kind of an upheaval style effect. New Sweeper and Starfall Invocation that you can reanimate something. So just trying out like the season effects with some sweepers and stuff, but not doing too hot in that respect. That's it. Early week. I'll be back in a couple days with an updated version of Best of 1, and then we'll get Best of 3 recorded as soon as we get the data, but give you an idea of what things are working, what aren't. If you like the mono red deck, do a full video on it, demoing the deck itself, so definitely check it out. Thanks for watching. Have a great one. Stay safe out there.